Hello, you made it. This is the last video of Torah. We're going to do chapter 33 and 34 of Deuteronomy because 34 is pretty short, so it won't take much. I feel weird about this. I didn't really think that I would feel nostalgic. I don't really get very nostalgic, but in full confession, when I started this project last late March, April, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure why or if I should do it or if even anybody cared. And I just decided this is what God told me to do, so I'm going to do it. And I shouldn't worry about anything else. Uh, and really great people like Bill and Jill that supported me from the very beginning, and Ruth and just tons of people. I know I'm forgetting all kinds of people. My bride, of course, Shay, Maddie, the people that told me to keep going and told me to do this or do that or make little tweaks here and there. And I hope it's been good. I hope you've learned. I hope it's moved you. And I hope you share this with a friend because it changed my life. I hope it changes yours. And we can all live a little closer to the God of the universe. Uh, and before we do that, we got to cover chapter 33 and 34 of Deuteronomy. And that's exactly where we're going to go right now. Deuteronomy 33 in the New Living Translation says this. This is the blessing that Moses, the man of God, gave to the people of Israel before his death. The Lord came from Mount Sinai and dawned upon us from Mount Seir. He shone forth from Mount Paran and came from Meribah Kadesh with flaming fire in his right hand. Indeed, he loves his people. All his holy ones are in his hands. They follow in his steps and accept his teaching. Moses gave us the Lord's instruction, the special possession of the people of Israel. The Lord became king in Israel when the leaders of the people assembled, when the tribes of Israel gathered as one. Moses said this about the tribe of Reuben. Let the tribe of Reuben live and not die out, though they are few in number. Moses said this about the tribe of Judah. O Lord, hear the cry of Judah and bring them together as a people. Give them strength to defend their cause. Help them against their enemies. Moses said this about the tribe of Levi. O Lord, you have given your Thummim and your Urim, the sacred lots, to your faithful servants, the Levites. You put them to the test at Massah and struggled with them at the waters of Meribah. The Levites obeyed your word and guarded your covenant. They were more loyal to you than to their own parents. They ignored their relatives and did not acknowledge their own children. They teach their regulations to Jacob. They give your instructions to Israel. They present incense before you and offer whole burnt offerings on the altar. Bless the ministry of the Levites, O Lord, and accept all the work of their hands. Hit their enemies where it hurts the most. Strike down their foes so they never rise again. Moses said this about the tribe of Benjamin. The people of Benjamin are loved by the Lord and live in safety beside him. He surrounds them continuously and preserves them from every harm. Moses said this about the tribes of Joseph. May the land be blessed by the Lord with the precious gift of dews from the heaven and water from beneath the earth, with the rich fruit that grows in the sun and the rich harvest produced each month, with the finest crops of the ancient mountains and the abundance from the everlasting hills, with the best gifts of the earth and its bounty and the favor of the one who appeared in the burning bush. May these blessings rest on Joseph's head, crowning the brow of the prince among his brothers. Joseph has the majesty of a young bull. He has the horns of a wild ox. He will gore distant nations, even to the ends of the earth. This is my blessing for the multitude of Ephraim and the thousands of Manasseh. Moses said this about the tribes of Zebulun and Issachar. May the people of Zebulun prosper in their travels. May the people of Issachar prosper at home in their tents. They summon the people to the mountain to offer proper sacrifices there. They benefit from the riches of the sea and the hidden treasures of the sand. Moses said this about the tribe of Gad. Blessed is the one who enlarges Gad's territory. Gad is poised like a lion to tear off an arm or a head. The people of Gad took the best land for themselves. A leader's share was assigned to them. When the leaders of the people were assembled, they carried out the Lord's justice and obeyed his regulations for Israel. Moses said this about the tribe of Dan. Dan is a lion's club, leaping out from Bashan. Moses said this about the tribe of Naphtali. O Naphtali, you are rich in favor and full of the Lord's blessings. May you possess the west and the south. Moses said this about the tribe of Asher. May Asher be blessed above other sons. May he be esteemed by his brothers. May he bathe his feet in olive oil. May the bolts of your gates be iron and bronze. May you be secure all your days. There is no one like the God of Israel. He rides across the heavens to help you, across the skies in majestic splendor. The eternal God is your refuge, and his everlasting arms are under you. He drives out the enemy before you. He cries out, destroy them. So Israel will live in safety, prosperous Jacob in security, in a land of grain and new wine, while the heavens drop down dew. How blessed you are, O Israel. Who else is like you, a people saved by the Lord? He is your protecting shield, your triumphant sword. Your enemies will cringe before you, and you will stomp on their backs. That makes a lot of sense, right? I know. Let's break it down. So most of the time, God handed out the blessings, and Moses handed out the consequences for misbehavior. So he was kind of the bad guy. So for him to give a farewell address of hope and joy and blessing, I'm sure was a relief to him. He got to say good things and not just the bad things. Moses had been the parent of Israel for 40 years, and now he could just be Israel's grandfather and kind of enjoy his last few hours. The first verse shows it was not Moses writing all this down because it speaks of him in the third person. And a man of God is just another way of saying a prophet. Before Moses pronounces his deathbed blessing, he gives credit to the God who formed Israel and is their God and their Redeemer, because the reason Israel exists is because God said they exist. He made them exist. So the next several verses are filled with some odd phrases that have really puzzled people and language scholars, and even a few of the Hebrew words are found nowhere else in the Bible. So sometimes there's just mystery. We got to be okay with that. So in verse 5, it means the upright one. And the idea is that among Israel, a king arose, and it happened during a gathering of the leadership of Israel, meaning that it was obvious who the leader was supposed to be. So this is remembering the day that God was made king of Israel by the tribal leaders at the covenant ceremony of Mount Sinai. So basically, they're all gathered, and this leader arose, and they're like, everyone agreed, this is God. This is our king. So verse 6 begins a list of individual blessings. Moses was standing in Reuben's territory when he did all of this. Reuben and Gad and Manasseh had settled on the east side of the Jordan River, so that's where he was at the time. They had not gone into the promised land yet. So the blessing is really a plea that the tribe of Reuben would live and not die, that they would not become extinct, be wiped out. Judah is given a blessing that foresees a time of war. The word used is a familiar one, Shema. Shema means to listen and take action. The plea has been for Israel to Shema. Now that plea is that God would Shema, to hear and act, that God would hear them and see them and do what he says he's going to do if they do what they say they're going to do. The plea for Moses is that the honor of using the Urim and the Thummim would remain with the Levites, and that God would continue to reflect his will through the use of those two stones that you would know about, and we know about, if you study the Torah. So it was the Levites who were being measured to see if they were the right choice as his personal priest. Massa means testing place, and Meribah means challenge place. So this passage is whom you tested at the testing place and challenged at the challenge place. So he shows that they went through and they passed his testing and his challenges. So verse 10 is essentially the result of what happened with Levi. It refers to the golden calf incident in Exodus 32. And even though it was Aaron who led the rebels, it was also Aaron who saw their error and stood with Moses against those who continue worshiping the calf. So sometimes it's about what you do after. Repent and forgiveness come after your reaction to the sin. So the result was that the Lord ordered Moses, Aaron, and the Levites who joined them to kill Israelites who continue to worship the result was the Lord ordered all of them to kill those who continue to worship the golden calf. Family members, including their own mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters. So when it says they didn't even speak to their sons or their children, it was repentance and their willingness to forsake their families that merited them being chosen as the Lord's set apart servant tribe. So you might think, well, I would never give up on my wife or kids. It's like, over God? Because that's what following Yeshua is. It's everything and everyone over God. So it can be tough. In Luke 14:25, it says this: large crowds were traveling along with Yeshua. Turning, he said to them, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father, his mother, his wife, his children, his brothers, and his sisters, yes, his own life besides, he cannot be my Talmud. He cannot be my disciple. Exodus 32 and Deuteronomy 33:8 form the context for this verse. We have to be willing to let go of anyone and anything to follow the Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus Christ. So verse 9, in light of its counterpart in Luke 14, says this: of his father and mother, the Levites, he said, I don't know them. He didn't acknowledge his brothers or children, for he observed your word and kept your covenant. So it means that these disciples should disregard those relatives if they stand in the way of turning to Messiah. Doesn't mean cut your family out and have nothing to do with them. It means if they try to stand in the way of God's will, his word, his Messiah, you have to let them go. So as a result of what the Levites did, they've been rewarded. And in verse 10, so Benjamin would occupy a buffer between the two most powerful tribes, Ephraim and Judah. So Paul was a Benjamite, and he was a buffer between the Jews and the Gentiles, the Jews of Judah and the Gentiles. So verse 12 says that Benjamin is Adonai's beloved. In other words, Benjamin had special favor. I think this is a reference to the wilderness tabernacle resting in Benjamin's territory, and then the temple would be built in Benjamite Jerusalem. That was kind of what he was saying there to that tribe. Verse 13 says the primary attributes of Joseph's tribes are fruitfulness and increase. The number one requirement for fruitfulness was water, which is the meaning of dew from the sky. So the bounty from the deep is springs and fountain water sources, obviously. In Israel, there is so much sun that they can produce 4 crops per year. Since months and seasons were measured by the moon phases, the bounty of the moon is agriculture. And so the bounty of the mountains and hills were trees, wood, limestone, precious metals, and various kinds of food. So a firstling bull is one of the highest sacrifices. A wild ox is symbolic of a strong warrior. So we go from Joseph's tribes being fruitful to being good warriors. Ephraim will consist of tens of thousands. Manasseh will consist of thousands. So Ephraim eventually dominated the northern regions, with 9 northern tribes coming under their dominance. And then verse 18 tells the people of Zebulun to rejoice. Zebulun has been associated with being trade merchants. Issachar is told to rejoice in their tents. Tents were homes for herders because they were mobile. So enlarging Gad means to increase the population. Gad accepted territory outside the promised land, and they received that great pasture land and croplands. And they had highly trained troops, because remember, they went in and fought and then came back out. So Dan was like lion strength and battle ability. He has those qualities. The tribe was assigned lands next to the Philistine territory, and later they migrated north. They fell away from God and into idolatry. It was too hard living next to the Philistines, so they gave up and they moved away, and eventually moved away from God. Naphtali was blessed with fertile territory located on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. They were the territory where Messiah was raised there. So Asher is blessed with fertility between Naphtali and the Mediterranean Sea. The phrase favored of the brothers means the most favored in the sense that Asher was greatly blessed. Saying that Asher would dip his foot in oil means olive oil, obviously. Asher occupied a major trade route and military highway. So they had the benefit and danger that came with all of that, but that's where most olive oil went. So not every tribe has been mentioned. For instance, Simeon. Simeon and Levi were the two sons who received curses instead of blessings, remember, at Jacob's deathbed. So Levi showed obedience at the golden calf situation, and he was that tribe was selected as the Lord's priest. But after the tribe settled in Canaan, the tribe of Simeon was just absorbed by Judah. So they kind of went away. Well, they absolutely went away. So we have Moses' last words, but one of the tribes, Simeon, has been left out. There are also 12 original disciples. One of those disciples was Judas Iscariot. So most believe Judas was from the tribe of Simeon. Moses' final words to the 12 tribe hours before his death, and Moses leaves out Simeon, who had been given a cursed prophetic future by Jacob. And that's where Judas came from. So let's fast forward 13 centuries. The night before he is to die, Jesus is given his final words to his disciples at the Passover table. Judas disappears and brings the temple guard. Judas is cursed by his act and then commits suicide, and now there are only 11 disciples. So you wouldn't know that if you didn't read Deuteronomy. That wouldn't have had as much meaning. You wouldn't have even known those were connected. That's the beauty of the Torah. So let's look at chapter 34, the last chapter in Deuteronomy. And it says this. I'm going to read from the Complete Jewish Bible just because I hadn't done it in a while, and I know you've been wishing I would. Moshe ascended from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the summit of Pisgah, across from Jericho, where Adonai showed him all the land, Gilead as far as Dan, and Naphtali, the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, the land of Judah, and the way to the sea beyond, and the Negev and the Arab, including the valley where Jericho, the city of date palms, as far as Zoar. Adonai said to him, "This is the land concerning which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I will give it to your descendants. I will let you see it with your eyes, but you will not cross over there." So Moshe, the servant of Adonai, died there in the land of Moab, as Adonai had said. He was buried in the valley across from Beit Peor in the land of Moab. But to this day, no one knows where his grave is. Moshe was 120 years old when he died, with eyes undimmed and vigor undiminished. The people of Israel mourned Moshe on the plains of Moab for 30 days. After this, the days of crying in the morning for Moshe ended. Joshua, the son of Nun, was full of spirit and wisdom, for Moshe had laid his hands on him, and the people of Israel needed him and did what Adonai had ordered Moshe. Since that time, there has not risen in Israel a prophet like Moshe, whom Adonai knew face to face. What signs and wonders Adonai sent him to perform in the land of Egypt upon Pharaoh, all his servants, and all his land. What might was in his hand, what great terror he evoked before the eyes of all Israel. Wow, that's pretty cool. So from Mount Nebo, Moses sees the promised land. He gets to look out on it. The order of the tribes and territories called out is as if Moses turned his head in kind of a panorama and just kind of like went like that. So it was in Adar, A-D-A-R, which is late February or early March, about this time. The Lord buried Moses. So a shrine would not be built. That's why there's no location given as to where it's at. In fact, there's no definitive location of where Jesus was buried for 3 days. The garden tomb in Jerusalem is like a tomb he was laid in, more than likely. So if it were the exact one, then certain people would worship the place instead of God. So God prevented that from happening. So all you have to do is see the path that Jesus walked to see all the golden churches and shrines that have been built up there. And God didn't want that. So, and I've been there, and it's a neat little tomb, but and you feel close, but it's definitely not the exact one. So Moses was mourned for 30 days. Israel stayed right there in Moab. So the outgoing leader would lay his hands on the incoming leader as confirmation of transferring authority. Nothing could override what Moses said. Because remember, when Moses spoke, he spoke as God. We learned that back in Genesis. So nothing could override the principles and laws. If the prophets couldn't override Moses, neither can a pastor or a priest or a pope, a bishop, a rabbi, or anybody else. And neither did Yeshua's words override Moses' words. He just didn't do it. There's no contradiction there. His own words in Matthew 5:17 that say, "Don't think I've come to abolish the Torah or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to complete. Yes, indeed, I tell you that until heaven and earth pass away, not so much as a yud or a stroke will pass from the Torah, not until everything that must happen has happened. So whoever disobeys the least of these mitzvah and teaches others to do so will be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever obeys them and so teaches will be called great in the kingdom of heaven." So Yeshua was and always will be the ultimate prophet and mediator because he is also our Redeemer. But even he said he did not come to abolish, change, subtract from, add to, or even challenge the words of Moses. So we shouldn't either. I absolutely cannot express how grateful I am that you've come along with it in this project with me. It's been an absolute joy and privilege to get to teach and to go through this with all of you. I don't see myself as above you or the leader or anything like that. I just feel like we're all learning together, and that is a great thing for God's people to learn God's word. It has been an amazing year, and I just can't wait to see what's next. It is right over here. I believe it is going to be the book of Jonah. It's a short book, but a really great book. And you're going to find out it had a lot less to do with whales than what we thought. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Please go to brandoncunningham.com, subscribe, get these in your inbox every time they're released, and share it with a friend, family, an enemy, or somebody you know just really doesn't like me. They will enjoy seeing a little over 200 videos of me. God bless. Love God, love people, and change the world.